What if I told you there was a build in Baldur's Gate 3 that completely dominates any battlefield, any combat encounter? It does not matter. You will always come out on top. But on top of all of that, also allows you to completely breeze through any social interactions. Does that sound like an interesting build to you? Well, if it does, then strap in, because today I'm bringing you the Succubus, a Baldur's Gate 3 Bard Warlock multi-class build guide. So today's build is really special, not only because it's near and dear to my heart because it is actually based off of the very first character I played in a D&D campaign, but on top of that, in Baldur's Gate 3, it brings an insane amount of utility, an insane amount of crowd control, and a good amount of damage, as well as making any social interaction easy peasy. Alright, and before we get into the build, I do want to leave you with a quick disclaimer. This is a thematic / role-playing build first, and then it is optimized second. There is ways, and I will shout out the ways as we go through the build, but there is ways to make this build more optimized for Baldur's Gate 3, but I want to stick with the Succubus theme as much as possible while still making a very viable and effective build. So let's get into the build overview. Alright, so for the build overview, it is really simple. You are going to be a backline caster who is going to focus on a bunch of debuffs, crowd control, as well as buffs for your entire team, so that way you can completely decimate any battlefield super easy. And you will also be a skill monkey. If you're not familiar with that term, basically you are going to have proficiency and expertise in so many different skills that you are going to be the party's face. You're going to be able to lockpick, disarm traps. You're going to be able to do it all with this build, which is super nice because it frees up your other party members needing those proficiencies, and you can just focus all of it on one character. Alright, so jumping into character creation, this is where the role playing begins. We are going to go with Asmodeus Tiefling. There's a couple other really good options here. If you don't care about the role playing aspect of it and you just want to min max, then I do suggest either a Githyanki or a Drow. Those both will give you access to some important racial abilities like Misty Step and Darkness and some other features, so those are really nice to have. However, we're going Asmodeus Tiefling specifically because it fits the theme of looking like a succubus. Obviously we want to be a succubus, but on top of that you get Hellish Rebuke, which is a nice spell to have, and it's always just nice to have in your back pocket. But more importantly, we're getting Darkness, and Darkness is a spell that we are going to utilize in this build, and you'll see later on the level guide how much we utilize this. And there is other ways to pick up Darkness, but it's nice to pick it up as our racial feature at level 5. So for our starting class at level 1, we are going to go Warlock. Now you can go Bard if you want to, however, because it's a multi-class, but it's realistically more of a dip. We're only taking 2 levels of Warlock. I prefer just to get those levels in Warlock out of the way and then focus on Bard. However, if you want to take Bard up to level 5 or level 6 and then switch to Warlock, you can. But for a thematic standpoint, as well as for a gameplay standpoint, I feel that in my testing, it was better to start off as a Warlock, get those 2 levels in Warlock really quick, and then switch over and just finish out with Bard. Okay, so for your cantrips, you're going to take Eldritch Blast, and I prefer Friends. You can take whatever you want as your secondary cantrip. Make sure you take Eldritch Blast because it is the best Warlock cantrip available, and we are going to utilize it a lot in this build. But I like Friends, 1, because it fits the theme of the build thematically, and 2, because Friends is really good and helps with our skill monkey theme. Okay, so moving on to spells, there are a lot of spells that you can take here, but the 2 that I prefer to take here is going to be Hex. Hex is really good because it gives you extra damage. It makes people have a disadvantage on whatever check that you want, which is really nice for this build. But on top of that, because we're taking Eldritch Blast and Hex is a classic combo. Eldritch Blast is going to give you more raise as you go up in levels, and Hex applies off of each individual instance of damage that you do, so that will be really nice. And the other spell that I'm going to go with is Charm Person, 1, because it fits the build thematically. It gives us a little bit more utility outside of combat, and on top of that, Charm Person is really nice, especially in the early levels, to help you just pass all of those charisma based checks. Okay, so here is the stat spread for level 1. This is what I personally like going. As a disclaimer, you can go whatever you want. You can mix and match as you see fit. However, I feel like for this build specifically, this is the best stat spread that you can go. So we have a 16 in charisma because charisma is our primary stat, and you really want to have a high charisma. You want to get this up to 20 in this build. Next, we have a 16 dexterity as well, because dexterity is going to allow us to add some of our dex bonus to our armor class, which is really nice because we we only are going to get light armor proficiency with this build, so having a little bit of extra dex is going to help with that, and also with some skill checks. And then constitution at 14, so that way we're not super squishy. We're still a backline caster, so we're still pretty squishy, but it does help us not get one shot in most battles. And then I like to put intelligence and wisdom up to 10, because we are going to be passing a lot of skill checks with this build by being a skill monkey, so having those as no negative will help with a lot of the skill checks that you're going to face in Baldur's Gate 3. And then I dump strength because we have to dump something, and strength is probably going to be the stat that this skill monkey build is going to use the least amount. All right, so moving on to level 2, we are going to take our second and final level in Warlock. As for the spells, I prefer to take Fairy Fire here. Now, it is a concentration spell, so just be careful with that, and also having Hex, but Fairy Fire is really nice because of the fact that you can just coat a bunch of enemies in Fairy Fire, and then your whole team has advantage on their attack rolls against them, which is super nice and super helpful, and can really make a huge difference in a lot of combat encounters. Okay, moving on to Eldritch Invocations. This is one of the primary reasons why we are actually going Warlock, aside from the theme of being a Succubus, but the Eldritch Invocations are huge here. So what we're taking is we're going to take Agonizing Blast, which is going to add our Charisma modifier to our Eldritch Blast, which is really nice, especially like I said before, as we move on to those later levels and start getting extra rays. And we're going to take Devil's Sight. Devil's Sight is going to be really important to this build, because like I said in the beginning of the video, we are going to be utilizing darkness. And if you're not familiar with the classic combo, when you have Devil's Sight, you can cast darkness on yourself, which means you can still see in it. Enemies can't see in the darkness, and they have disadvantage, and ranged enemies in Baldur's Gate 3 won't even attack you, so people have to come into the darkness and then have disadvantage, but you will be making all of your attacks with advantage because you'll basically be invisible. So this is super nice. It's going to help you maintain concentration by not being targeted, especially because you're super squishy and we don't have constitution saving throw proficiency. But on top of that, it will allow you that when you do choose to do damage spells or Eldritch Blast, it will allow you to make those attacks with advantage, so you're going to hit more often and you're going to do more damage. So these together are really huge and really core to this build. Okay, so moving on to level 3, now we are going to start taking our levels in Bard, and we're going to finish out with Bard all the way through. As a quick disclaimer, I will say that we are going a College of the Lore Bard up to level 10, and we are sticking with Archfey Warlock at level 2. You can change this around if you want. If you want more levels in Warlock, you can go it. However, when playtesting this build and doing my research for this build guide, I feel like taking Bard up to 10 and getting a total of 4 magical secrets as well as access to those 5th level spells is so incredibly important and way more powerful than what you get by taking extra levels in Warlock. You can if you want to, but for this build specifically, I think that it works the best when you do get access to the level 5 spells and all those magical secrets and the improvement to your bardic inspiration. All right, so level 3 cantrips, you can literally take whatever you want here. You have your primary damaging cantrip in Eldritch Blast. You don't really need any other damaging cantrips, so you can take whatever utility cantrips you want, like Minor Illusion or Mage Hand if you really want to, but it's completely up to you. All right, moving on to spells. Here are the spells that I personally like taking. You can take whatever you want, you can mix and match whatever you want, but these are the spells that I really like taking, and I feel like not only fit the theme of the build, but also still make you incredibly powerful and useful in combat. Level 4. Level 4 is really simple for this character. Since we're going to be 2 and 2, you're going to get another Bard spell. For that Bard spell, once again, you can take whatever you want. However, the spell that I'm going to shout out and the spell that I personally like taking is Featherfall. I do believe Featherfall is really nice to have in your back pocket, and there's a lot of times during exploration you will come up to points where just having Featherfall and allowing you to traverse in a way that you wouldn't be able to before is really nice, and I've personally done it a lot, especially to skip over certain parts of maps or areas or avoid walking all the way around. So I think Featherfall is perfect here. Moving on to level 5, we are now College of the Lore Bard, and one of the coolest things that we get at this level is not only access to second level spells, which is really nice, we're going to go over in a second, but we get Cutting Words, and Cutting Words is super nice. What this allows you to do is to spend a reaction and a bardic inspiration to give an enemy a penalty on their next ability check, attack roll, whatever. This is super nice. And as a quick tip, I will say to go into your reactions tab and put on ask, so that way you don't do it automatically, and you can see what the enemy is doing and then see if you want to use your bardic inspiration on that. If you know they're going for like a big spell or a big attack, then you can use that and you don't waste it on some random enemy who's just doing like a basic attack with a sword. In terms of spells here, I'm personally going to take Hold Person. I think Hold Person is really good for a multitude of reasons. One, Hold Person is incredibly powerful in and of itself and can really shut down one specific enemy and just absolutely destroy them. There's a lot of humanoid enemies, especially in Act 1, that shutting that person down and allowing the rest of your party to just beat on them is super nice and can completely turn the tide of a battle. But 2, it also fits the theme of being a succubus and having like this entrancing aura about you. So Hold Person to me is perfect, but again, feel free to pick whatever spell you want. So another thing that we get as a College of the Lore Bard is we're going to get access to more proficiencies and expertise, and this is going to further increase the bonus that you get to the specific skills that you choose. You can choose whatever you want here. However, I will shout out, just pay attention to the ones that are going to be charisma based and the ones that are going to involve social interactions, because that is where we're really going to thrive in. So that's where I'm going to put my extra proficiencies and expertise in, but you can mix and match as you see fit. Moving on to level 6, we are now a College of the Lore Bard level 4, which gives us access to a couple different things that are super important. One, we're going to get a cantrip. You can take whatever you want at this point. It really doesn't matter too much because you have your core cantrips. 2, for spells, you're going to get access to more level 2 spells. There's a couple different ones that you can pick. Here is a list of the couple ones that I like taking at this level, but again, the choice is really up to you. And last but certainly not least, we either are going to get a feat or an ASI. Now, I personally here like to bump my charisma up to 18 because our charisma is so important to us, not only for our spell saves with all of our enchantment and CC spells, but also for our social interactions. So I'm personally going to bump it up to 18. However, I will shout out, if you do want to take a feat here, then I do recommend something like Warcaster, because it does give us that advantage on our Constitution saving throws, so that way we can maintain concentration on our spells, because there is a lot of really good spells that we are going to want to concentrate on. But I prefer to get this later and get charisma up to 18 right now. So now we are level 7, which means we are Bard level 5, which means we get access to level 3 spells. Level 3 spells are incredibly powerful in D&D and in Baldur's Gate 3. So this is where I will shout out that if you wanted to go Bard up to level 5 first and then get 2 levels of Warlock later, you can do that, because I understand how important having access to level 3 spells are, but I'm doing it in this specific way because, again, it fits more with the theme, and I think that the 2 levels in Warlock first and then going into Bard, we still are going to be able to do a lot of what this build wants to do without having access to level 3 spells as early as we possibly could. But again, you can do that if you do wish. So moving on to the level 3 spells, there are a lot of really good options at level 3, but the one I'm going to shout out the most, and the one that is my favorite, not only for this build, but is just an incredibly powerful spell, is Hypnotic Pattern. So the reason why I really like Hypnotic Pattern is because it really is a fight winning spell. Being able to just completely incapacitate a group of enemies at this level is super useful. Now, it will break when they do take damage, but if you do Hypnotic Pattern and then you strategically choose the enemies that you're going to fight, or if you just want to take a group of enemies out of the fight so you can focus on the other enemies, this is going to last for 2 turns, assuming that they fail their wisdom save, and they're going to be completely useless. They can't move, they can't act, they can't do anything. So Hypnotic Pattern, not only does it fit the theme of being a succubus, but is also an incredibly powerful spell. So that is the one I will say absolutely take, and then the rest of the level 3 spells are completely up to you. Level 8. Level 8 is a super important milestone for this build, and that is because we are now a College of the Lore Bard level 6, which gives us access to magical secrets. Really quick, you are going to get another level 3 spell. You can pick whatever you want here. I like Glimpse of Warning to have an AoE damage option, but again, you can pick whatever you want here. So, magical secrets. We have a ton of options here. I mean, it's literally the entire spell list of level 3 spells and below from any class, which means you have so many different options. You can really take whatever you want here. There are going to be a couple that I'm going to shout out, but here are the ones on the screen I really like. One of the ones I'm going to shout out is Darkness, if you want to take it, and depending on your party comp, Darkness is going to be huge, because again, we are going to utilize Darkness a lot in this build, and right now we can only use it once per long rest with our class feature. So having access to Darkness on this character as a spell that you can just freely cast is really nice. But for me personally, when I play this build, I like to have another party member that can cast Darkness, so that way I don't have to take that as one of my magical secret slots, because that's really one of the only ways we're going to be able to get Darkness as a castable spell. So again, I'm going to shout out Darkness here if you don't have another party party member that you want to use darkness on or has access to darkness, then I would recommend taking darkness here. But if you do, then feel free to choose whatever 2 spells you want from this list. All right, so moving on to level 9, we now have access to our level 4 spells. There are a lot of pretty good level 4 spells available to the bard, but the main problem is most of them are concentration, and we already have a lot of really good spells that we like concentrating on. And since you can only concentrate on one spell at a time, it does make it hard and does kind of limit your options on which one you want to do per combat. So here is the list of level 4 spells that are really, really nice and that I would personally consider. The number 1 pick for me is going to be a spell that isn't concentration, and that's going to be Dimension Door. The reason why is because we don't naturally get access to Misty Step, being this bard warlock multi-class in the way that we're playing it. So having Dimension Door, basically having a Misty Step that we can take another person with, is really nice. However, you can take whatever you want, and in the equipment section there are some equipment I am going to shout out that does give you Misty Step on that equipment, so that's something to consider as well. Okay, so moving on to level 10, this is going to be another huge milestone for us because we get another feat or ASI. Now what I'm going to shout out here really quick in terms of spells is you do get access to another level 4 spell, so you can take whatever you want. Again, you saw the list from before, just take whatever you want. It's personal preference at this point. And in terms of the feat or ASI, there are 2 options. I'm not going to say which one is better than the other, but here I would either go with Warcaster because, like I said before, we have a lot of really good spells to concentrate on, and so having advantage on our saves for maintaining those concentrations is really, really nice. Or you can bump your charisma up to 20. I'm going to leave the choice completely up to you. Both are really good and both have their advantages or disadvantages, so take whichever one you prefer. So moving on to level 11, we now have access to our level 5 spells, and there are a lot of good options here. Here are a few on the screen that I personally like, but the 2 I'm going to shout out and the 2 that I recommend that you pick up at level 11 and level 12 are going to be Dominate Person and Hold Monster. Not only are both of these spells incredibly powerful and can even be combat winning spells, but they also fit our Succubus theme perfectly just by the nature of the way that they work, right? So not only do we have incredibly thematic spells to fit our Succubus theme, but we also get game winning spells as well. So those are the 2 I recommend the most here. Level 12, the final level, and boy, for this build is the final level certainly a powerful one. So you are going to get access to another level 5 spell. Again, you can take either the Dominate Person or Hold Monster, whichever one you didn't pick before, or whichever one you like. That's really up to you. But we also do get 2 more skill expertise, and this is going to be personal preference, but this is going to help even more. And at this point in the game, you should basically be passing like every skill check that your bard makes, so that's really, really nice to have. But the biggest thing that we get here is 2 more magical secrets, and now these can go up to level 5. You have so many options here. I can't even begin to tell you what to take here. You literally have every spell available to you level 5 or below. So take what you want, take what sounds fun, take what sounds powerful, take whatever you want here. There's a huge list, just have fun with it, mix and match. Because of the respecking feature, if you don't like the spells that you end up taking or you want to try something new, just go ahead and respec and then take different magical secrets. But you have a lot of options here, and this is a lot of fun, and this is one of the reasons why I love bards so much in D&D, and especially the College of the Lore bard, is because magical secrets is possibly one of my favorite features that a class gets in the entire game. So have fun, pick whatever you want. And then another thing that we do get here is also an improved bardic inspiration die, which is really, really nice too. But again, it's all about those magical secrets, so have a blast, pick whatever you want, and that is going to be it for the level guide. So now we are going to move on to the equipment section. There is a lot of people that did request equipment in my previous build because I did say that I didn't go over them for spoiler reasons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bunch of equipment on the screen, and what they do on the screen, I'm going to include some ones that you can get early game as well as some late game ones as well, so that way you have options and things to look out for all throughout the game. But on top of that, I will also leave links to every single piece of equipment that I'm showing you in the description box below, so that way you can go and find out where to get them. I'm not going to tell you where to get them in this video, so that way I don't spoil anything for you. And if you do want to find these pieces of equipment, just make sure to check the description box down below. There's a lot of really good options out there, though. These are just some of the ones that I really, really like. Okay, so build overview. Now that you've seen the entire build from levels 1 through levels 12, I really, really like this build. This build is so much fun. I've been playing it a ton in Baldur's Gate 3, and it shores up one of the main weaknesses that I felt like when I was just trying to play a straight College of the Lore bard. And the biggest problem that I had with College of the Lord Bards is when it comes to the Bard spell list, you don't have that many damaging options. Obviously, Magical Secrets does help with that because you can get some damaging options, but between all of the concentration spells that you have and a lot of CC and utility spells being concentration, you really end up getting limited turn for turn and what you can do as a bard. There's unique ways to get around this as a pure bard, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to implement Warlock and having access to Eldritch Blast and Darkness, which is a classic combo, so that way on the turns where we don't need to cast like a good crowd control ability or good CC ability, or we're already concentrating on a spell, then we can output still a lot of damage because of the fact that we have Darkness, because of the fact that we have Eldritch Blast. All that combined allows you to output a really solid amount of damage when you don't need to be this insane CC monster, or when you've already cast your CC, or when you just want to save some spell slots. So I really like this build. It allows us to take on every single social interaction in the game, a lot of skill checks in the game, and they should all be a breeze. You'll get to a point where you're really not failing anything. You'll have a ton of utility, support, and crowd control options, and you still get to put out a good amount of damage as well, and that a lot of that damage is going to come from without spending any spell slots whatsoever. So that is the Baldur's Gate 3 Succubus build I have brought to you today. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like down below and hit that subscribe button if you do want to see other Baldur's Gate 3 build videos. I am going to have a pinned comment for a poll on voting on the next build video that you'd like to see, so make sure to check the pinned comment down below and go ahead and vote on that poll, so that way we can see what build is next. But that is all for today, so I will see you all in the next one.